All right, here we go. What's up, guys? I am Skylar Davis, owner of Culture Shock Clothing and Records here in Rockford, Illinois, and this is Vinyl Happy Hour. If you haven't been keeping up with us, please subscribe to the channel and check out the other videos because we bring a new one every Thursday, or try to at least. So, special coffee today with some Green Spot Irish whiskey because it is St. Paddy's Day, in case you're wondering what's up with the special coffee here. And this is going to be my favorite type of show to kind of talk about. Hopefully you learn some things and hear about some new releases and some older stuff. This is just kind of for show. I'm going to bring a green record. We'll talk about this one in a little bit. But I want to jump right into this because there is a lot to discuss and I want to keep it moving nice and fresh for you guys. New release, finally, Charli XCX has had a lot of delays, a lot of artists have on tours and music and things like that. But her new album crashes out. This is the indie store exclusive gray vinyl. I'd like to think it's gray because it's got this kind of cool throwback to the old school kind of 90s Corvette. So I was like, oh, that's kind of chrome and colorful like their wheels. But this is, like I said, this episode is all over because there's so many different types of music. And I'm a huge aficionado or lover of music. I have been for a long time. The store I opened almost 16 years ago, and I've been collecting vinyl since I was a kid, since 30 years ago probably. So this is very poppy. This is for your pop heads, very dance heavy, very electronic, very cool though. Honestly, there's a lot of throwback sounds to even like Janet Jackson or, Madonna, or comparisons to Dua Lipa, Madonna, other modern things. But she's doing her own thing. She started in the music biz very young as well. Just caught her on Saturday Night Live. That was cool for her to be on there. But yeah, it's just a great album. And one thing I like to talk about is these indie store exclusives, which I believe are already sold out from her distributor, but we still have some available at the store. There's a link below the video too, to cultureshockshop.com. Definitely worthy checking out. The other reason I pick up on a lot of songs off of this album is not just because they're just good bangers, but gosh, just like so many good beats. There's even a little bit of like some new wave and stuff like that mixed in and just some older dance sounds. I love the mixture of that really modern, really crunch pop stuff. She's working with a lot of different producers and collaborators on this, so totally cool, totally great to check out. Nice gatefold jacket, very cool art, got a pop sticker on it. So another thing though that's going on, and I just like to talk about some of the things you find and discover at record stores. My shirt is kind of a little teaser for something I want to talk about later, something cool hidden in our record. But we're doing a dollar sale for spring cleaning sale, and I was just like, this is so cool. This is an Eddie Money record. This is not on our website or anything. I just wanted to show it off. Some people missed out on this in the store, but it is a white label promo, and this is just kind of one of the other terms or things you can look for in records. Back in the day, of course, when radio stations were still playing records, if you've ever seen something that says for promotion only on a record, or a white label promo where it's different than the regular record label, the other cool thing about this is it's got the cuts listed right on front, so the radio DJ could pick a song or know how long the song was. But there's a lot of kind of other interesting things about this record. Sounds great. It's just a random good, 70s classic rock album. But white label promos were typically the first runs, from what I understand, whenever records were getting pressed, because they wanted to get them out right away to radio stations to start playing. Just a great sounding album. But this had been marked down. It was going to end up being $1, so I took first dibs of that for myself. I don't have a lot of like Eddie Money kind of stuff in my personal collection, so just thought I'd show that off. Just kind of a cool little random show. Let's see, another new release or whatever. This is actually from Sonic Youth, In, Out, In. This is a collection of kind of some unreleased material from the last 20 years of them. Nice thick vinyl too. This is Sonic Youth at a very kind of almost like a free jazz sound. This is a very kind of interesting thing. It's not something you could just do a needle drop in. You gotta let your head wrap around it and get into it. Sonic Youth for me, like growing up in the 90s, they got lumped in sometimes to the alternative kind of grunge sound even in a way. But they're really so much different than those bands that came out of that 80s and 90s era. And they were a New York band, much more in tune with like the no wave and avant-garde or noise rock kind of music and stuff too. So it's cool. It comes with a little, what we call an obi strip here, talking about some of the stuff on the 3-load recordings and more info about this. This kind of music, or the way they made this release, because it's from different demos and some's from a live show even, it makes sense on vinyl because the first side is very detuned guitars, just very kind of experimental, and then it kind of accumulates into a track that's more like a song that you would consider with Sonic Youth. The B-side does the same thing, and even though it's very kind of detuned guitar, experimental, just kind of some people, you know, may not get into it unless you really focus on it. But then it ends up with a really great track. This final track, Out and In, definitely something that revels like that feel of the early Velvet Underground or something like that. So it's just cool to see release from, you know, a band, some releases or some songs we hadn't heard before, some unreleased stuff. I don't know, I think there's rumors swirling that they're going to make something new or something. I'm not sure on that, but anyway, I just want to kind of talk about it a little bit, and speaking of some jazz and stuff too, I just want to talk a little bit about jazz because this Milt Jackson fellow, classic stuff. He was in the Modern Jazz Quartet, and you'll find him popping up in my personal like random used and jazz collection stuff. This is kind of a little more kind of funky later jazz with Hubert Laws, but the Blue Note record series is doing this thing called the Classic Vinyl Series, and a lot of the Classic Vinyl Series is stuff that's very accessible, kind of easier to get into jazz, nothing that's too far out. It's something that could be easy to pick up if you're a jazz collector, or if you don't want to get something that's too kind of far out or hard to get into, because some jazz can definitely be that way. And I want to make sure I feature and mention some of these artists that are older artists or something to pick up on, and Blue Note records in particular, originals, are just so hard to find. They're so expensive, all that early 60s stuff especially. So I just kind of want to mention that this Milt Jackson piece is out, and what's different about this than others, I mean, he's a vibraphone player, so if you like the vibes too, I mean, I'm not going to imitate the sound of them, but it's definitely a different kind of jazz too, and there's not a lot of horns on some of the stuff, but this release, why I wanted to get this, and this was a really nice one. It's got the classic tall man Lou Donaldson on sax, on horn, and that's a really great piece to mix in. But this one I was even more excited about. This is also from the classic series. Early jazz piece from Bud Powell. Hard to find this early Blue Note stuff, and probably several $100s or more for originals. So thank God they're doing these really nice, high quality, all analog recordings, nothing digital. They give you a really nice out of the package feel too. It's on this like poly-lined inner sleeve, so as soon as you put it on, take it out, play it, I mean, it's beautiful. I've had records where there could be some static or a little dust or whatever, you know, you got to clean them up, even a brand new record, but these guys, they're pressing them at Optimal Record Plant, I think, in Germany is what it's called. Just great pressings, great quality, and all completely from original analog tapes. So I wanted to mention that. I've got a cool Psych piece, and then I'm going to talk about a metal piece that has just a really cool story, and I think has a chance to become very collectible. I've shown off that record up front, that green one. This is actually a reissue from the great 60s. Oh, I can't even tell which way is up or down here. But the 13th Floor Elevators, the Psychedelic Sounds of, this is a reissue of just a great classic. Some people call this the first psychedelic record, like a truly psychedelic record. Excuse me, I forgot who the... Oh yeah, Charli Records out of the UK is the one who's reissued these. This was originally on the International Artists Records, and they replicated, even though it's on the green vinyl, they replicated the original label that was on those, that kind of really dark teal color. This is just, obviously a lot of people would probably know them because of You're Gonna Miss Me, that screaming, howling, cool psychedelic piece that features on the High Fidelity movie. I think that's where a lot of people first heard about them or picked up on this band. Man, this is, I think, recorded in 65. I'm not going to get these years right, probably. But these guys formed, I think, University of Texas in Austin area in like 62. So these guys were doing some psychedelic stuff and music way before a lot of other bands were, and they were way down in the south part of Texas. So totally away from England and California and New York, where a lot of other things are usually going on. The 13 Floors Elevator album is essential, though, for any good rock and psychedelic collection, I believe. Also very hard to find and hasn't been reissued for a while. But yeah, this album came out either 65 or 66, and they kind of were ahead of, like, you know, even like the Doors and the Grateful Dead and stuff like that. But they have such a weird, unique sound, just great howling, eerie screams and vocals, and guitars that just kind of keep driving, and they have a jug player, like, making weird noises and stuff, which just really adds to that element of strangeness. From what I read, though, I mean, I don't condone drug activity or anything like that, but this band really, the lyrics and the words and the images on their music, and from what I've read about these guys, their leader, Hall, or whatever, who was in the band, had them do LSD for every performance, every practice, every recording even. They were all on LSD. that was it was still legal at the time. That was like when the acid trials were happening and stuff like that. So there's a lot of story and background on that, okay? People racing down the street, background noise. You might hear some geese out here too. But anyway, just a cool gatefold. Oh, the biggest thing to mention though about this specific release is the first record I was showing off, and then this one. This is the mono and the stereo. So this is a double package. You get both records. The stereo is the one that most people have heard, and the stereo separates kind of the vocals and guitars a little bit, and gives a little more of a haunting feel and kind of just a cool feel. But the mono recording, which is how a lot of records at this time were recorded, because a lot of people still had one speaker systems, it's a lot more driving. Like I say, it's heavier and you hear it a little deeper. And the lineup is different. This mono recording is the original track tapes, the way the band intended the playing order to be. So I'm used to the stereo version, so hearing it in the mono version was really cool. And unfortunately, these guys weren't really around long and really only made 2 serious albums. So to get a chance to hear both versions of that is, I think, worth it. I wouldn't always suggest getting a mono and a stereo recording of both, albums from a band, but I feel like this one's really worth it. So that's the Psychedelic Sounds of the 13th Floor Elevators, though. And we're going to talk about another one of theirs, I think, next month, because they just dropped 2 reissues. But let's make this kind of our feature right now. This is not necessarily a new release that just came out this week, but it came out last year, and it's been very hard to get a hold of because records have just been selling out like nuts. This is a tear in the fabric of life from Knocked Loose. Oh, I can't see. Knocked Loose. These guys, it's brutal. This is heavy. This is something where this hardcore just hits at a different level. I mean, it is scary heavy, scary hard. I love it. This is the kind of stuff I love to listen to. But not only do they have a cool indie store exclusive release, that's finally, we've got our hands on a few more. They did this cool black and marbled, but it's like an EP. And on the backside, they have a tear in the fabric of life with a handprint printed on or etched on, since this B-side of the record doesn't have any music, couldn't get used for anything. That's what is just so cool to talk about and listen to and show off records, is how many ways you can build them, fabricate them, and the stories you can put into them. Because on God Knows, the second track on this, which is just a heavy hitter, the way it ends up is it kind of fades out to God Only Knows from the Beach Boys playing. And that's on this record. And some kind of copyright thing happened or whatever, and that's not streaming now. Like, that part of the song, when it hits, there's like a little guitar feedback maybe, but there's like 30 seconds of dead air, dead space there, because they kept it lined up with the original recording and stuff, and it goes along with a YouTube video they created to go with this whole story. So I have a feeling, a collector's feeling, that this is going to become valuable and or collectible maybe. If it gets reissued, it might not have that Beach Boys sample in it. So for me, it's cool to be up at the front seeing these releases come out that have something that got pulled or banned or, copyrighted, something like that, because this might be the only chance we have to get it and hear it how the artist intended it to be. I hadn't really streamed this. A kid was in the store the other day asking about it. I was like, well, let me play this and find out. I'm sure it's on the record version that we had, because I have another version of this record, and I was on there, and I was like, he'd been streaming, it's not on there, and I didn't know that, and it's the cool stories you find when you're talking with people. But and I also just can't stream this kind of music hardly, like not while I'm driving, or because I just couldn't drive straight. It's just so heavy. Just the grooves get just so crunchy, so heavy, and the screams are just so raw and high. It's kind of got like that New York hardcore scream to it in a way. And so Knocked Loose is a band to check out if you like heavy stuff. I mean, they're sensational, and all the bands I just mentioned, please check them out. I like to go all over with jazz, pop, metal, a variety of things. I love blues music too. And there's so many good indie rock bands and indie store exclusive and releases coming out. So I hope you check up on our videos, and we love comments and shares if you got ideas for things. Just keep sharing the channel, supporting your local indie record stores wherever you live. And if you want to support our store and don't live here in the Rockford area, just go to cultureshockshop.com. I'm going to drink just a little more coffee and get my day going. We'll see you soon. Cheers. Oh yeah, I'm going to go turn this camera off.